Hi, I'm Brenda Gear. Welcome to the PEEKaMEET method. Our mission is to share tips and resources with job seekers, freelancers, and entrepreneurs to help them overcome the challenges of COVID-19. We're in this together. We will win this together. Today we have Heather Hicks with us, and Heather has a couple of jobs. So we'll let Heather basically do her elevator pitch and tell us what it is that she does. So Heather, please introduce yourself.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, my name is Heather Hicks. I am an attorney with a nonprofit here in Colorado, and I am also a reserve JAG. And in that capacity, I am a defense attorney.
So what is it, Heather, you do for JAG?
So for JAG, I just switched to the reserve from active duty this year. And so as a defense counsel, I represent soldiers who are facing, adverse actions, whether that's undergoing investigation or they're being separated from the Army for various, alleged misconduct or inefficiency. Technically, we would do courts martial, but those are pretty rare in the reserve.
So you left the military full-time during COVID?
Yes. So, right before COVID hit. So I left active duty February 1st. It was official. So right before COVID.
So how was your job search during that period?
It was pretty interesting. So in preparing for leaving the military, I started my job search, even earlier than that, trying to be prepared. But I had not found a permanent position by the time COVID hit. So my job search was interesting. I was applying all over. I was applying to a couple of different law firms, but my goal was to stay with nonprofit or government work. So that's where I was trying to remain. And so it was just different. The interviews were telephonic or video. One of them I had to submit a recorded video ahead of time. So it was quite interesting. And then finally I landed the position that I'm in now. And so I started that position in May, although I interviewed for it back in February. And so starting a job remotely was really interesting.
How many places did you apply and how many interviews did you do before you finally got a job?
Well, the majority of the jobs I applied for was on USA Jobs. And so I might have applied for 10 or 12 of those positions. And for those people who do jobs and do a federal job search, those are pretty difficult to get. So I was interviewed for 2 of those positions for USA Jobs. And other places, I think I applied to, 3 different places.
So can you tell us what it was like starting a new job and not getting that ambiance, that culture, the introductions to your coworkers, and it's very much non-traditional?
Yes, it was strange. So when we started, there were 2 of us that started in this position. One is in Denver and I'm in Colorado Springs. So our supervisor was training us on, I believe it was Microsoft Teams every day for a week. And so we were doing videos and PowerPoints as part of that training and just discussions on Microsoft Teams and, screen share and stuff like that. So you definitely missed out on the, let me pop my head into this office and ask a question about how to do something. So that was missing. And then my position does, we do 2 weekly calls with the entire office, and those are on Zoom. So I see everyone's faces as long as everyone's, has their camera on. There's no requirement to have your camera on. It just, most of us do have them on. And so that helps. And then when my boss actually told me, Heather, you get to choose a paint color for your office. It was weird because I was like, well, I don't even use my office. I hardly ever go in there, but I picked the paint color and I put some fake plants in there, but I've used my office once since I've started in May. And then popping by the office, because I go to court and my office is close by the courthouse. So sometimes I have to pick up mail, pick up business cards. So one time I stopped by and I saw some of my coworkers who I've seen on video every week. And seeing them in person was really weird because one was a lot taller than I expected. One was really short, and you just didn't see that when you're on video. So that was just kind of strange, and it was kind of like we were meeting for the first time, although we've been on video every week.
Did your organization use any kind of tools or gamification or anything to do an introduction to get you guys to know each other, or do you do that in any of your weekly meetings?
We had an introduction on my first weekly meeting, and it was just, this is Heather, and everybody went around on the screen and introduced themselves and what their position was, and that's it. There wasn't any kind of other icebreaker or anything like that.
So I met this woman recently. Her name is Katie Wall, and she created the Culture Biz. And the Culture Biz is exactly for that, helping people to get to know each other and break out in meeting rooms. And I think it would be perfect in a situation where people are just starting up in a new position and they don't know each other.
I think that would be good. I think depending on affordability, I work for a nonprofit, so.
Fortunately, it's very reasonable, and I think it's a great tool. So Heather, were there any other challenges besides not getting to know your coworkers in the way you traditionally would with starting the new job?
For me, I like to ask a lot of questions when I'm starting a new position, and I was actually starting a position in a whole new area of law that I did not know. So just kind of gauging where you stand with other people was kind of difficult. Reaching out to coworkers. So we use Microsoft Teams. And so reaching out to them and constantly asking questions, I couldn't really tell, am I annoying this person? Am I asking too many questions? Because there wasn't really a facial reaction to what I was asking. Sometimes they would respond, sometimes they didn't, depending on what other attorney it was. So that was kind of a challenge. And I think I'm doing well with them. I think we've built good relationships. So far we've done more of group chats for those of us who focus on this specific area. I work in housing law, and so we have our own little housing chat, and so we throw questions out in there, and there's a lot of jokes back and forth. So there were a lot of challenges starting a job during COVID, but I think there's been some benefits too, and I do appreciate those.
What's one or two of the opportunities that you found in this?
So I'm kind of partly an introvert, partly a social person. So I like being around people, but I also just like working, like sitting down at my computer and working. So some of the opportunities really are saving money on gas and not driving 20 miles a day to the office. Having more time to work because I don't have to get dressed every single day that I'm not in court.
Or driving.
Yeah. So, and then just being home with my dog. So, I have two dogs, and one of them is she's a wild one. So when I leave the house, I have to crate her, else she chews things and just goes wild. So being home and letting her run free is, to me, just a great benefit, and letting her have her freedom.
I'm sure she's so glad to have you there.
She is. I had a training today, and she popped up on my chair and joined in.
Maybe she'll help you get through your training, like your little dog helped you get through law school.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
You spoke a little bit basically about introverts, extroverts, and you're a little bit of both. Were there some times that you felt isolated, and how did you deal with that?
In the beginning of COVID, right, there wasn't really anything to do. Extracurriculars were off limits. So in the beginning, I didn't mind it. But then you kind of miss the social circles if you're hanging out with friends or doing things. Thankfully, by the time I got kind of tired of being isolated, COVID restrictions were more relaxed. And so I play volleyball about 3 to 4 times a week. And so that resumed, and that was a great help. Even with COVID restrictions, increasing as they are right now, volleyball is still going on. So it's just a good outlet to get away from the legal world and the stressors that I deal with. I deal with a lot of just emergent issues with clients. And so it's pretty high stress throughout the day. And so getting away from that, getting away from my house, getting out of the house, and just going to play volleyball. I play volleyball with all non-attorneys, so I don't have to talk about work. If I vent about work, they let me vent, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. So it works. So volleyball has been my go-to. Getting out and still going hiking every once in a while. I don't know if you've been to Royal Gorge. I got out there, and saw the Royal Gorge recently. So it's good.
Are there any books or any resources, blogs, podcasts, or anything that you would recommend people that are looking for a job, or maybe just actually just kind of deal with the isolation and the stresses that COVID has brought upon us?
I don't have any specifics that I would recommend. I do recommend people just have some kind of blog or podcast they listen to, because it's, especially if there's one that, puts out daily podcasts. So I listen to the Daily from the New York Times, and just keeping up with the news, although some of it's a little gloom, but just keeping up and having some kind of routine. So just waking up and listening to the podcast, having your coffee, and then going to work, taking a break if you need to. Honestly, there's some Facebook groups that I've been a part of, over the last year. I think one of them I don't know if it's federal jobs or USA jobs. I'd honestly have to look it up, but really whatever area that you're trying to pursue, I recommend, looking up Facebook groups. I know Facebook seems outdated these days, but for those of us that I guess are older and we still use Facebook, I think that's a good resource. And then networking, just, you never know who you're going to meet, and doing a hobby that you enjoy. So finding also Facebook groups for hobbies that you enjoy. I have found some pickup games and met some people through also Facebook groups for volleyball. We have Colorado Springs pickup volleyball groups. And then I used to live in New York City for a while, and I met a lot of friends through meetup.com. And Meetup also has an app. So there's a meetup group for everything that you can be interested in. So I think not only, reading a book and listening to a podcast, but getting out and trying to meet people. I know during COVID that's difficult, but they're still doing, some of these groups are still doing weekly happy hours, just virtually. So I think those are good opportunities.
A coffee hour or a happy hour?
Yes.
For those that only have tea or coffee.
Some of them are doing a lot of, I think one of my attorney associations, one of the bar associations I'm a part of, does, at least they started doing a trivia throughout the week.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps your mind engaged, at least.
Right.
So we all have an ask, Heather. So I've learned this year we can have more than one ask. So what is your ask?
I think my ask is for, and I hope I'm doing this correctly, is for people to embrace life, even with COVID-19 restrictions in place. I would say don't let the isolation get to you. And if it does get to you, then I say reach out to someone for help. I think the suicide rates are going up exponentially when they don't need to. And so I think with everyone being isolated, they're not around people, they're not bumping into people, they're not seeing them at work, or doing, just outside of work. And I think people are just slipping into these depressions, and there are people out there that will respond to you. And so I would say embrace life, but don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are a lot of people that are isolated and they just kind of feel lonely or desperate, especially, not having money or not having a job. And it can lead your mind to places it doesn't need to go. So I think it's okay to tell someone. There's no shame. A couple months ago, I was participating in Denver Startup Week, and Brad Feld interviewed David Moore, and the discussion was about mental health, and this. And it wasn't even COVID related. It's just like people in general, they have mental health issues. And so there are some groups, and also you can find those on Facebook or whatever as well, but there's plenty. You can just Google it. So it's definitely, and it's okay to tell someone that you're struggling, and vent, let them help brainstorm and help you find a solution to the issue, and don't let the solution drag you down.
Right. And, and it's easier said than done, especially when you're in the middle of that. But, you just have to talk to somebody. Honestly, I've suffered from depression myself. And, during those times, you feel like you have nothing, but just talking to somebody and just telling them how you're feeling can honestly just change how you're feeling completely. And just having that talk and just getting it off your shoulders can change how you're feeling.
That's a beautiful ask, and I'm really glad you put that out there into the universe. So we definitely want that. I think stricter lockdowns are coming, and we want people to be happy and find solutions to their issues. And
Right. And one thing I've seen in my job, so I deal with, a low income population, and they, have little to nothing. Um, and some of them know where to look for help, whether it's, financial help or just getting food or whatever it could be. Um, and sometimes they just don't look for help. And so what I will say, when we start looking for help and we start talking to other agencies, there have been surprisingly a number of resources available for people. So I would, ask as many people as you can, call around, call organizations, go online, look at their websites. A lot of people are posting COVID resources, and just, Google everything you can, help for this, help for that, in your county. And so it's just been surprising to see what's available. So I think people just, you gotta try to find it.
so what we'll do is we'll add a slide into this video with a link to those resources, and they'll be in the YouTube video as well. So Heather, maybe you can collaborate with me to be sure that we can get some resources out there to some folks.
Yes, of course. I don't know how far your podcast goes or this group goes, but yeah, I will do my best.
Oh, I appreciate it. So thank you, Heather. It was a pleasure having you today, and stay tuned for more PEEKaTips.